conversation going. So as I say, I'm the editor of the paper in Independence. What I am not is an expert in any way on homelessness, but I can bring you the perspective of a journalist who has covered Blue Springs, Green Valley, and Independence for a long time and has watched this issue appear to grow worse. My observations are going to be that, first of all, we live in communities with a lot of good people doing a lot of good things, but a lot of times our leaders seem to be at a loss about how to get their arms around this. That this issue has many causes, is very complex, and has no single solution. And that some of this, and this applies to our relationships across the culture, some of this comes down to whether we truly respect the dignity of each of our fellow citizens, regardless of their background or their bank account, and do we truly see the face of Christ in all others. The number of homeless people in Kansas City is pretty hard to pin down. Pastor touched on this in her sermon this morning. It includes the people who are living on the street and in homeless camps, and there are plenty of those. It includes people living in their cars, people who are couch surfing night after night, and the people we see at the street corners, asking us for help. Maybe these numbers will help a little bit. City Union Mission says it has about 220 people in its shelters every day. The Salvation Army on Truman Road in Independence historically is full all the time. The point is that the system, such as it is badly, badly stretched constantly. We should touch on the causes of this, but again, I stress that I'm not an expert on this. Clearly, mental health issues are a large factor, although I think, at least, it's hard to escape the conclusion that that's also an easy way for politicians to change the subject. And mental health services still remain under-resourced, so what do we do with that? There are also a lot of folks who are working at low-paying jobs that I would say are part of the overall predatory economy that's kind of all around us. And folks who are they're living paycheck to paycheck, but they are one bad break, one medical bill, one whatever, away from catastrophe. But I also think, and this is my big soapbox, I think transportation, which is to say the ability to get to and from work, to and from the doctor's office, is a big part of it. And these large and deep and ongoing cuts in bus service that we're going through right now, in Independence, in Kansas City, and Blue Springs cut the very small and very lightly used service it had. Other places they've cut it. That doesn't help. But I am increasingly convinced that the major part of this is the housing market itself in Kansas City. Rents are up a lot. Home prices are up. It seems like it's only a slight exaggeration to say that developers only want to build apartments and McMansions and nothing in between. Starter homes are harder and harder to find. Christina Lakey, who is the head of Truman Heritage Truman Heritage Chapter, Habitat for Humanity. They're in Independence, but they serve the whole area, including Blue Springs. She says that 15 years ago, they could build a home for a family for about $80,000. Okay. She says they recently built one of those homes, 1,400 square feet, 3 bedrooms, enough for a family, nothing big, nothing fancy, and it appraised at $220,000. Right. And that sounds like, oh, well, we're ahead. You're not ahead. Because that means more in insurance, more in taxes. And if you're a family that's on that edge and you're trying to get back on your feet, that's a problem. I think Christina explains this better than anybody I know. So if you want homework, I've got homework. It's a podcast. It's a good podcast. It's called We Have Issues Independence. There's a little humor in that, that's intended. And there's a 2-part episode called An Uncomfortable Conversation. It was posted October 20th and 27th. Full disclosure, I'm a guest co-host on that one. And Christina discussed in this podcast the nuts and bolts of this, its complexity, and a little bit of what we as faith communities can do about it. I also think it's important to recognize that there are groups here in Eastern Jackson County who are doing a lot of good work. I cannot speak for them, obviously, but it seems fair to assume that they would welcome any help anybody would want to give in time, talent, treasure, or whatever. The first one that springs to mind, of course, is the Community Services League, which does it doesn't run shelters, but it does provide assistance from food to financial counseling to job training, which I think their job training programs are a game changer for a lot of families. Significantly, Community Services League is working with Good Shepherd Community of Christ on Blue Ridge Boulevard over by let's call it the Blue Ridge Walmart, and you all know exactly what I mean, right? So we all remember them all, right? Anyway, they're over in that neighborhood. They are opening soon a drop-in center for homeless people. There's nothing like that around here. It's a place to get a shower and do laundry and perhaps see a medical professional, connect with social services, that kind of thing. Independence Rotary raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for this. The state of Missouri's kicked in some money. The point is that this is a congregation that had homeless people showing up on its property constantly, and they chose to embrace that. Habitat for Humanity builds homes and is the home lender for its partner families, and they do like that language. I think there's this idea that Habitat builds homes and gives them away. They don't. They build a home and they're your lender. It's a zero interest loan, but you're paying for it over time. It has also put a focus on, in recent years, on repairs for the homes of seniors with the idea of helping people stay in their home, age in place, which is good on, works as a policy, just works on a lot of levels. And hopefully that allows families, rather than corporations, to own this community's housing stock, and that's a real issue. River of Refuge is a ministry over in the old Park Lane Hospital on Raytown Road, just southeast of the stadiums. It has this specific focus of getting families out of the pay-by-the-week hotels. River of Refuge calls them, says they're the working poor and calls them the hidden homeless. These are families with kids who are getting on a school bus in the morning and doing all those things. They're just in this really not good situation, and they're paying $800, $1,200 a month for a one-room space. There's not a kitchen or any of that sort of thing, right? So a lot of limited options there. So River of Refuge has turned that old hospital into a bunch of apartment-like units. And families can stay there for a few months while they save up for a down payment, for a utility deposit, all those things that are, a lot of people are just on that edge. They can even learn cooking skills, although that's like a real issue. So budgeting, that sort of thing. So they're doing that work. The Englewood neighborhood in Western Independence won a zoning change that will allow small secondary homes on lots that already have homes. Sometimes these are called mother-in-law homes or whatever. Or they could be tiny homes. That's kind of a different thing. They did their homework. They ran into opposition from people who said, not in my neighborhood, but they won people over, and they won over the city council, and they got the change. That probably won't change the world. We're probably going to be talking about a half dozen homes over the next several years. But there's some, and Habitat was ready to roll with some of their own projects in that area as soon as that zoning change came as well. It's something, it helps. The Independence Ministerial Alliance has for years tried to foster a wider community conversation about this issue. I do not know where the Blue Springs Ministerial Alliance has. I haven't been in touch with those folks in ages. So I'll leave you with this, and we really just want to have a really good conversation. I'll go back to my friend Christina one more time. She says that some of this is just the human condition. The poor have always been with us and always will be. The questions are, do we see the dignity of each other? Do we see the dignity of each of our fellow citizens? And are we willing to come alongside these fellow children of God to work in partnership and to support change, even if it's in our own neighborhood? With that, Betsy will agree that in our meetings on Sunday morning, I have a knack for offering the comment that brings the conversation to a dead stop. So
we're all good at something, right?
Okay, we're all good at something. So I leave you with those two heavy questions, and welcome thoughts, questions. What do you got? Yes, ma'am.
What was the name of the podcast again?
It's called We Have Issues Independence. It's the two co-hosts. One is Dan Hobart, he just went off the city council. The other is Lori Dean Weiler. She's on the planning commission. She's on the Truman Habitat Board, all this sort of thing. They don't look at the world the same way politically at all, but they're really good friends, and they respect each other and love each other and as friends, and they can have good conversations. And most weeks they'll have a guest or two. I filled in for Dan for a half a dozen, or a few handfuls, I'm trying to say, of episodes last fall, but so.
It was after I asked him if he would come.
That is true, that is true.
Here-
Because you asked me like ages ago, yeah.
And he says, well, I'm, getting a little minor and homeless.
Kinda. Well, and I'd heard Christina Lakey talk earlier about this and said that we need to do more of that, so we did. So yeah, I'd recommend it. They do all kinds of things. It's generally specific to independence, but not always. What else?
Do you happen to know if that Ministerial Alliance in Independence, do you have to be a pastor in Independence, or could our pastor be a part of that?
At the risk of getting in trouble with my good friend Sarah Wemberly, pastor at St. Mark's Methodist on Jennings Road, I will speak for her and say, all are welcome. I am absolutely sure they would love to have people at the table.
Because I
Yeah.
think that would be, if pastor's part-time, and so that's part of it, but the idea
Yeah.
that she can be with other pastors
Yes.
is important, especially on this issue. But-
Yes. Tell Sarah I said it was okay. That will get me in trouble. Sarah's a good person to be in trouble with, so it's okay, yeah.
So, I have been to Hawaii 3 times, and twice we were in Oahu. And I noticed all of the homeless people in Oahu. And because I like to see what other churches do, I went to a Lutheran church and talked to them about their banners and paraments, and they showed me the different things they had and all of that kind of thing. And so we had done that kind of thing, and I said, so what is your congregation doing about the homeless in Honolulu? And she told me that what is happening is, I think it's more on the West Coast, agencies or something are paying for a plane ticket for a homeless person to go to Honolulu, and then they're there instead. At least they're not gonna freeze to death, but it's an expensive place to live. And she said the problem was the cost of getting someone set up in an apartment that they could actually afford. And so it wasn't just, okay, here's a month rent, good luck. She said you have to be able, the church or whatever organization has to be willing to support them over time. And so that just makes it so much more difficult to even figure out what you can do for homeless people. And that she told me that, and I'm going, because, and then I saw how, could you raise your consciousness about something? And so I'm watching PBS on a Saturday afternoon, which I basically never do, and they had a documentary about Oahu, might have been specifically Honolulu, where they took a motel and turned it into housing for individual folks. Because there's already a bathroom there, right? There's a bedroom and a bathroom, and there's usually a little sitting area. And so this agency did this, which is cheaper than so many other things that you can do for homeless people. Because one of the worst things is they don't get health care. And because they don't get health care, if they get sick, they go to the emergency room. And that
which
is
is super
so
expensive.
much more expensive
Right.
than if you're going to a doctor in any kind of regular way. And, but the cost of this agency, it was so much cheaper because these people had a place to live that was like warm, and they could take showers, and they could have a little kitchenette kind of thing,
Right.
where they could do some of their meals.
But recall that somebody on the Kansas side tried to do this last year, caused a huge fuss, that's predictable, and it didn't happen. Maybe they're gonna come back and try again, I don't know. You say that,
Yeah.
and you say, oh, you have a dead hotel, you have a need, this should work, it's logical.
Right.
Yeah, it is,
Mhm.
until the rubber hits the road.
Another time I heard on Channel 19, I watch Channel 19 a lot.
Send your money.
Yes, I do send them money. But they were talking about trying to get lower income housing in the Northland. And people fought it tooth and nail, and they never could get anything, so it's not in my neighborhood. I don't want
Right.
these kind of people in my neighborhood, so.
So, a couple points. It occurs to me that I made a grievous oversight, which is, let's not forget the good work done by Metro Lutheran Ministry. And I know that among other things, the quilting folks who go back to Abiding Savior days do their, and we do the Christmas store at our place, at Emmanuel. And we have space, and it's a good location, and when they do the Christmas store, they take over the building for a week, and it's great. And so this congregation and others do support MLM, and as Lutherans, we have done in this community for a long, long time, and we should acknowledge that and maybe celebrate that. The other piece that something you said reminded me of is there's this ongoing issue in Independence with an apartment complex or apartment building, big old tall apartment building, is not great. It's been in the news a lot. They have a lot of issues. It's the one where a little boy fell out of an upper window and died because they didn't have guards on the window like you should have. And part of you says, just close it. Where are those people going to go? That's the issue. You want the city to just step in and fix it. Well, if you just kick everybody out, that's some of what we're up against. You're up against a lot of very imperfect choices. That's kind of how the world works. And so I don't know. I think I'm being a total downer here. I mean, it's not a good subject, but I mean, still.
Well, we didn't expect this to be
Okay.
daisies and
But
roses.
you had this
and-
great sermon that was full of life and sunshine, and then here I am,
I do appreciate that you used the word dignity several times.
Yeah.
And that is something for us all to remember too, that, so many people want to, just, okay, we'll give money,
Yeah.
but not in my backyard.
So Christine and I had this conversation, and it comes up again on the aforementioned podcast. My frustration for the longest time has been that the community has city union mission and things like that, but there's no shelter for single men anywhere, and that's the biggest part of this, although families are big. There's no shelter like that at all in Eastern Jackson County, none. Even the Salvation Army, that's always been a family focus, that's important too. My friend Christina points out, such a shelter is a compassionate response. Nothing wrong with that. It's a compassionate response. Does it solve the problem? No. The problem is the issue. The solution is jobs and housing and all of that. But please tell me I'm not the only one who struggles day to day, not beyond this issue, to always see the face of Christ in other people. Please tell me I'm not the only one who struggles with that, because I think we all do. We need to be reminded of it.
We don't always even think about it.
No, we don't. No, we don't. So it's hard, but I appreciate that.
Well, it's really easy to default to the transactional, right? To the, let me give money, let me donate whatever, and not figure out how to get into the relational side of things and embrace people who don't look pretty or don't smell pretty or whatever as our neighbors. That's really challenging. It's much easier to say, not in my neighborhood.
And it's complex.
And it's complex.
We look at Southern California being on fire, and everybody knows somebody. And, I've been texting with a friend back. We've all doing this. What's the single best thing we can do? Well, the single best thing we can do is pray and reach out to our friends. But beyond that, you know what the best thing you can do is? Write a check to Lutheran Disaster Response.
Right.
And it is just money. But you know what? It's like a really tangible, important thing you can do. Write a check to LDR, right, like today. Do it. There's more to it, but it does help. So,
Yeah.
Now, as you were talking, I was thinking about a homeless person getting help. Now, is that all on them, or is there some way that agencies or people
there
or
are agencies that try.
to
There are, and I think a huge part of the problem, first of all, there's some stigma to all this, but also people just aren't aware of what's out there. That's why I touched on the thing like Community Services League, working with some other organizations, and this is mostly an independence, I think. I don't know if they've brought it to other communities yet, but they do a lot of this. Like, you can get certified as I'm going to get it wrong, a certified nurse's aide or associate, right?
CNA.
A CNA. You can be a CNA in about 12 or 14 weeks, I think it is. And you're going to go from being paid for what the employers would consider unskilled labor at a nursing home to hospitals will grab you tomorrow and you'll have a decent job and a job with benefits and all that sort of thing, which if you're a mom and the kids haven't been to the dentist in 3 years, that's huge, right? So what they've done, I don't know, this is kind of wandering from your question, what Community Services League and others have done is they say, okay, let's take you out of that situation, but for those 3 months, first of all, you gotta do the work. You still gotta pay the rent, you still need groceries, kids still need to get to school. So they'll do all those wraparound services. And it is a game changer for a lot of families. And that's a stackable credential. You can move on to other things. It's terrific. They've done that with welding. They've done it with, I cannot say the word, but the people who take your blood, phlebotomy, right? Because you can get checked out of that in a few weeks. And it's like a decent job, right? So yeah, that's out there, but is that widely known? Truman Heritage, in Independence, did a really cool thing. They saved a historic building, renovated it, took them forever to raise the money in the middle of the pandemic, all this sort of thing, but that they moved their offices in there next to their Restore. You go to the Restore? Restores are great. That's Truman Heritage. Mm-hmm. And that's their offices, and they put this building back into use, and they do classes in there. Because what do people do? Well, what you and I would consider to be basic budgeting. The family budget, and buying the right foods and the thrifty foods, let's say that, you know. That sort of thing. Those are all life skills that a lot of folks need help with, right? So those services are there. A lot of those services are available to anybody, you know. Missouri Extension, they do great stuff, you know. I don't know if they get a lot of attention for it, but, you know, if you want to learn how to plant a garden or do the family budget, they've got that stuff. And it can do a world of good.
Well, it just seems to me that you could be in a situation like that and you wouldn't even really know how to ask for help or
Right.
who to ask. And one of the things that, it's kind of veering off that, but we have talked in church council about having some sort of a network of churches, because we have the group of churches that does the Lenten meals and the services. And so we were all set, and Pastor was going to go to the meeting last year where they were arranging the Lenten services. And so the idea was she was going to go and talk with all of them and see if we could have like everyone come here and we serve them lunch and figure out ways that the churches could cooperate, because people shop around. And so they could come here and then they could go down the street or, you know, that kind of thing. So if we had some sort of a registry, like a Google Doc, so if someone came here, Jean would enter their name and the date and what we helped them with, so that if then they went to a different church, they could look that up and see if they had been helped before and when it was and what they needed and all of that kind of thing. So that was the plan. And then they had vacancies at like 2 or 3 of the congregations that we cooperate with. So Pastor and I, at our last meeting, it was like, it sounds like things are on an even keel at most of the churches now, so that then she could, because I think it's this week, aren't you going to have, to see if there would be a way that we could reanimate that idea, just so that we had some sort of understanding about the people who are asking for help. And whenever you give to the Angel Fund, that's the money that Pastor and Jean use to help the people who call or come to the church. And if you want to buy gift cards, those are also very well received, because lots of times these people need gas. And so if you give them a Quick Trip gas card for like $20 or something, you can help. So it's
Just
not.
remember, we will never text you and ask you for gift cards. Yeah.
Right. So if anybody does, they're a liar and don't do anything. So.
I'm not your grandson lost in Mexico or something like
Yeah.
that. However, that's a scam, yeah, right.
So-
So you know that deal with the Blue Springs churches have done forever, the Lenten thing that Betsy mentioned? Emmanuel and some others are gonna do that this year. Holy moly, change is possible. Who knew? Who knew?
So it's churches in the area there are
yeah.
going, that's good.
It is good.
That's really good.
Probably 20 years overdue, but
Yeah,
yes,
but-
it is good.
Well, we're thankful when things happen, so.
Yes.
A plug for the Angel Fund, because that's what we use the money for. And so, and we do have limits about how much we will pay, like on a light bill or, you know, that kind of thing. And so, I wanted us to talk about this because I think it's an important problem. And I also wanted to raise everyone's awareness, and then maybe we can come up with another good idea. Maybe there's something else that All Saints can do. We are already, because Community Services League told us about this, we already buy the cans that have the lift top, because if you're homeless, you probably don't have a can opener.
Right.
And they have homeless people who come to the Community Services League and get food. And so, like, I always look, is that one of those top, those are the ones that I buy, so that, you know, if that's what they want, then they can get something like that.
So-
Maybe also there could be a resource information sheet, like if someone
Yes.
came for a gas card, when you give them a gas card, give them the sheet of where additional resources.
Right.
That is a
Right.
good idea. So I was gonna ask Jeff if we
Well-
could have your crib notes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. My take would be that every congregation, every community's got to make their own decision. Not everybody's going to do what, and I have a lot of good friends at Good Shepherd Community of Christ. I was scoutmaster there for years. My son was an Eagle Scout there. This is a major change for them to embrace what's going on around them, but everybody's going to make their own decision. Not everybody's going to do that. My own congregation is at 1700 Westport, okay? We're a block off the state line. I believe, well, our protocol is if anybody shows up asking for help, send them to the pastor, and I believe our protocol is that at the moment, I don't think the pastor's too inclined to give out cash, but is very quick to send people to the specific aid that they need. I think there is a small fund. Obviously, it's at the pastor's discretion. You've got to kind of work your way through what you think is appropriate and how you can best serve, whoever shows up. I mean, I'm uncomfortable with the fact that our building, our sanctuary is way up here, but everybody comes in one floor down off of Bell Street back here, but as soon as the service starts, the ushers go down and lock those doors, right? Because we've had issues of people there's a lot of issues there. Just safety, okay? There's a lot of violence in our culture. It has nothing to do with homeless people. And then there's there's all of that. We feel compelled that we've got to go down and lock those doors because we've had issues of people getting in, sneaking into a room, and then everybody goes home, and then they've got somewhere warm to be for a couple of days. And it's happened,
Yeah.
And part of you says, were you warm for a couple of days? That's a good thing. You also left a horrible, horrible, really horrible mess. There's a bathroom down that works, but no, we've had that too. So, it bothers me that we lock the doors. But what are we supposed to do, right? I think that, I don't have an answer on that one, all right? I mean, I'm on the safety committee too, we had, the committee to prevent the kind of incidents that have happened in churches with guns, okay? Because that's happened, it's a thing. And none of us wants to even think about that. So you gotta run through that stuff. It's tough. That's a whole nother conversation. Again, to be a downer, I'm here all week.
You're doing really
Yes,
well.
I got all kinds of material for you. Yeah.
So any other questions or comments? Jeff and I have done most of the talking, and
I got a thought.
Sharon?
Well, a few years ago, we used to have business cards for the community league, and we would use those when we give out gas cards, or when Paul and I went out to talk to our campers out here a couple of years ago, we gave them the address and phone number of the league and told them that they would give them training or what resources they had available. I do like that resource sheet to use, but we did do that back then. We used to give, you're in contact with somebody somewhere.
Sure.
Give them that community card, because they do more than just give food out.
They do. And I should point out, they have limited money to put people in hotel rooms on nights like we're going to have tonight, because it's going to be 3 below or some stupid thing. We should play a football game, because it's going to be 3 below. Oh, we did that last year. But they have to pick their shots. That money only goes, so I think they get a little bit from the city. They can't just do it like all winter long. It's just not going to work. And my sense is that's kind of what social service agencies across the metro area are up against. So you still have people living in camps, you know, in the middle of the winter,
You're
you know,
not get rid of them.
yeah. If it's dire enough, what does that look like? Then some resources can kick in. That obviously raises a larger question. Yes, ma'am.
Blue Springs bought that, Baptist church over on Main.
They did.
That big one.
Yeah.
I saw that somewhere. And I was wondering if they would turn that into a homeless or a compartmentalized.
Yeah, they've talked about using some of that as kind of an art space, you know, because there's a nice, you know, open space in there, and then there are other things they could do there as well. I think they have a kind of a broader idea of bringing some development there.
Didn't give us any further information.
Yeah, well, they're being a little, the city council, they're being a little coy. They bought it, now they're like, well, we haven't figured out what to do with it.
Yeah.
They do have a downtown master plan. They seems like they're trying to work on that plan, and there's nothing in that plan about any kind of homeless shelter, that's a different conversation. Right or wrong, it's a different conversation.
Any other comments? Okay, I'm gonna tell you one more story before we leave. You are not in the story. No, no. Project Comfort, the quilting that we do, started at Abiding Savior. And those of you who know Independence realize that for whatever reason, there was like, these people were all cracked. They built 3 buildings. So it's just like, so they had the administrative building, and then there was like a, parish hall, and then the sanctuary building was kind of in the middle in the back.
Like a city on the hill.
I know, and
Sorta.
it was like, this is so,
Sorta.
the first time I saw it, it's like, this is so lame.
I dated a girl in high school who said, are there like tunnels between those? Yeah, there's tunnels, yeah, right.
Yeah. But it's like, this is not California. This is not a good place to do something like this. So we would have our quilting in the parish hall. And so it was always on Saturday, we had jobs, and so it was on Saturday, and this man comes to the door, and he was so respectful, he was so cleaned up and nice, and he was black, and so he said that he had moved from Ohio with his 2 children who were teenagers because he was starting a job, moved all the way from Ohio to the Kansas City area so that he could start this job, and it was gonna start in another week, and they were living in that residential hotel thing that's on 40 Highway. Yeah. So that's where they were staying, and he said, well, we have like a crock pot, and we have, I don't know, microwave, a toaster maybe, or something like that. But he said, we're running out of food, and I am gonna start my job on Monday. And so, he said he had been told that Abiding Savior had an assistance office. Well, this was Saturday, and they only were open, I think, on Tuesdays. And so I said, okay, well, you know, come in, and I'll make some calls. So it's Saturday, and I'm trying to call Salvation Army, and nobody answers the phone, because it's Saturday. And so that didn't work, and I said, okay, because like he got the bus, and then he had to walk like half a mile to get to Abiding Savior. And so I said, okay, what do you need? I'm gonna go to the grocery store, and I will get you what you need, and so you can feed your kids. Yeah. So he said, well, if we could have some hamburger. And I said, okay, what else? And so, you know, I was kind of pushing him, and I said, okay, you know, cereal, milk, apples, you know, and he hated to ask for very much. So anyway, I went to the Price Chopper and I bought him apples and hamburger and cereal and milk, and I think I might have got some applesauce. I got some cookies and I got some candy bars. And I made sure that it was not so heavy that you could carry in 2 bags, you know. And so I took it back to Abiding Savior, and he was sitting outside. There was a bench outside, and he was sitting outside. Well, apparently the women, quilters, were uncomfortable with him being in the fellowship hall while I went to the store. And so he had gone back outside, and I was like, I'm so sorry. And so I gave him the food, but I couldn't take him. I didn't know him. I couldn't like drive him to the bus stop. So he was gonna have to walk like half a mile to get to the bus stop. And I prayed for him, but I have no idea what happened to that guy and his teenage daughters. So it was bad, I thought.
As the editor of the local paper and a journalist, I hesitate to advocate for much, but honestly, if you want to make a difference, get your elected leaders to do something with these hotels, the pay by the week hotels. They're all along I-70. They're all along 40. They're a menace. They're just exploiting people, and people should live better than that. That's it. That's my take. Anyway.
Okay, it's almost been an hour, my friends. Any other comments or questions or anything? Jeff, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Here.
You realize that I know that you know about lots of other subjects.
Oh, yeah. You want to hear about fly fishing?
Not that, but who knows? Thanks everybody for staying. Think about this. Maybe there's something else we can do.
Yeah, she's gonna go, there's not going anywhere today.
That's right. So